Instacart is on a mission to have you not leave the couch this basketball season because between the pregame rituals and the postgame interviews, it can be difficult to find time for everything else. So let Instacart take care of your game day snacks or weekly restocks and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes because we hear it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. So download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants.
Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never-frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences, like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, and I might be the most excited for any guest that I have had on this year, actually. Our guest today is somebody who's going to help you understand yourself, understand how you work best, and she is the go-to expert in a system that has single-handedly changed my life. So I'm so excited to interview Erin Claire Jones. She's the leading expert in human design, author of the book, How Do You Choose? And through her coaching and content and digital products, she's empowered hundreds of thousands of people to overcome their biggest obstacles and find their flow at work, in love, and in life. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
I know a lot of people listening heard me ramble, right? But then they're sitting there like, what on earth is human design? Can we break it down a little for them?
Of course. So, human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth, like astrology. And it gives us all this very practical, personalized information around how we best move through the world, whether it's around how we make the best decisions, how we navigate relationships and partnership, how we work best, what we need to keep in mind when we build our businesses, how we work for others, all the things. I think that I always say human design is equal parts mystical and practical. It's, of course, mystical in that it comes from the stars, and it's so practical and that it really delivers so much information that we can almost immediately integrate into our day to day.
I think that when I learned human design, my initial response was like, oh, this is the like why I am the way I am. Because
Mhm.
everybody kind of has their own way of being and existing in the world. And I felt like for me, it was just a really important explanation that the things and the way I functioned weren't good or bad, but they just were. And like learning how to use them changed the trajectory of my career, really. So I know that human design is broken down into design types. Would you mind diving into that a little bit and maybe where they can get the access to their chart so that people can follow along?
Of course. So you can look up your chart for free at humandesignblueprint.com. And like you said, there are 5 different types. There are so many more layers underneath that, but that really is the first piece that I recommend looking at. Those 5 types are manifestors, manifesting generators, generators, projectors, and reflectors. I'm going to start with your type because you're a manifestor, which is a more rare type. This is about just 8 to 9% of the population. Manifestors are very naturally kind of disruptive, provocative, innovative people. These are people that are so good at initiating new ideas and new ways of doing things into the world. They're not really here to tread a path that's been walked before, but to kind of walk their own path and chart it entirely in a way that works for them. They are so good at kickstarting new ideas and might lose energy when it comes to sustaining and maintaining all that they've begun. So a big lesson for them is embracing that their gift is really in getting things started. Manifestors tend to love freedom. Freedom to do what they want, when they want, how they want. They don't often do so great working for others unless they're kind of given a domain of responsibility to be in charge of. And their energy is very bursty. You might find that you're so on fire over a couple days, weeks, hours, followed by like a real need to pull back and be alone. So for you, I would imagine that your energy feels best when you're kind of honoring those natural cycles and not forcing consistent momentum. And the last piece that I would share is that manifestors are very much here to make the first move, whether it comes to dating or business. Like when an urge arises within you, you're really just meant to follow it. Many of us are meant to let things come to us and see what sparks us. And for you, it's really kind of trusting those urges and making that first move. How does that feel to
Yeah.
you?
No, it's so true. And I think that everything in my life I have initiated. And I think sometimes as a manifester, I feel like I would really like somebody to initiate with me or create the opportunities for me. But I find that when I give myself actual time to rest and I cannot
Yeah.
do hustle culture. That is not, I tried that when I first started business and I realized really quickly, like you said, I have a hard time sustaining ideas. And I think even that like societal almost guilt, like I'm lazy. And I
Mhm.
know that, manifestors and projectors and reflectors really lack that natural energy in the same way that some of the other types do. I know we're going to talk about the other types, but I'm really curious for somebody who's like really feeling guilt or shame around the way society wants you to function versus the way you naturally do. Do you
Yeah.
have any good words of wisdom or advice for that?
I mean, honestly, my encouragement is just to experiment with it. My experience is that when people really start to honor these natural cycles, whatever it looks like for their design, because each person's very different, they just feel better and they end up being so much more impactful and so much more successful in the energy that they do have. Like I would say for you, particularly, like not only does your energy operate in bursts, but you're incredibly fast. Like you can do more in 3 hours than most can in eight. And so like if you're in a position where you're like in an office and you have to be there for 8 hours, my guess is you would like do a lot in the first 3 hours and then just kind of like screw around for the rest of the time because you're like, I already did it. And so like if you're able to honor that and be like, oh, I'm gonna like actually just go for a walk or lay down or like garden and then like let the energy surge back, like my guess is you're way more effective. And so like there is a lot of pressure to like be consistent in our output, and yet a lot of us aren't designed that way. And my experience as somebody who's also not designed that way is whenever I try to do that, like it's just diminishing returns. Like I'm not very effective, I'm not very inspired, I'm not very creative, I'm not very successful. And so I would just encourage you to experiment with it and see how it feels, because my guess is the feeling will give you all the information you need.
I love that you kind of acknowledged that when I try to push past that, it is a diminished return. And then it
Totally.
feels banging my head against the wall trying to make something happen that isn't happening. And I do tend to find I feel less creative
Yeah.
during the periods.
And also, again, every type is different, but let's talk about manifestors. Like, it's you are here to like have all these new ideas that you bring to life, but those ideas often come to you in rest, in quiet, on walks, in showers. So, like, if you're in this very overzealous mode where you're not giving yourself permission to rest, you are also making yourself unavailable for new ideas to come. And so, like, rest is actually like the way through which you like discover the next thing you're meant to create in the world. So, it's so beneficial to everybody that you actually carve out that space.
How do you work as a manifestor as a parent? I feel like parenting, and I guess the same with a projector, which we'll talk about momentarily, but I feel like the demand on your system to go, go, go and be, like when you're a parent is different than, let's say, work and finding rest in work.
Yeah. Are you a parent?
I am. I have two girls. And
Oh
you're a
my
newer parent,
God.
right? You have babies,
I also have two girls. How old are your girls?
17 and 14.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yeah, mine are 2.5 and 8 months, so I'm a little bit farther behind on that journey. But I guess what I would say is that a couple things that are important for manifestors as parents. One is carving out space to kind of be in your own uninterrupted flow is really important. You're probably going to be able to do it less often as a parent than maybe you were prior. And yet, still, just like if it's for an hour or 10 minutes or 5 minutes, like it can still make a difference. I also think as a manifestor, because you're really here to do things your own way, I think really giving yourself permission to kind of like approach parenting in the way that feels really authentic to you, even though others aren't doing it that way. I sat with a manifestor recently who's a human design reader. She's amazing and she's a manifestor. And she said early on in parenting, and this won't be true for every manifestor, like the constant demands were a lot for her. And so what she ended up doing was switching with her husband. He stayed at home and she built her business. And so she like kind of found a balance between the two, but like being able to like leave the house and have that autonomy just felt better for her. And so I think it's just considering like how can you carve out space to be in your own flow, whether it's working or doing something else. And also like something I've discovered as a projector is like also like how can I hang with my kids in ways that don't always require me to exert all the energy. You know what I mean? Like I'm like really good at laying down when my toddler is just like running back and forth, back and forth. And I'm like, I'm here, but I'm also horizontal. So finding the moments where I need to rest and not feeling need to kind of be up and at them all the time.
It's so funny you say that because my husband is a projector, and when the kids were really little, he would let them draw on his back. Like that was like he would lay on his stomach on the floor and just give them some like washable markers and like have at it. We're all together playing, but he would find like I think there is a whole thing right now with horizontal parenting, but he was
Oh my
like,
God, really? I didn't even know that.
oh yeah, Google it. Yeah, it's so interesting. But it's how do I rest and honor the rest, but also interact with my kids, but not at a high level. And even as a manifester, I've said this a million times over. I love the age my kids are at. I struggled 5 and under, like just that constant physical in and out of the car, getting them in the
Yes.
tub. The physicality of 5 and under was really, really hard for me. And now it's like I have so much fun with my kids, and I don't know, we just have a great relationship and a great time. But 5 and under, I was like
Yeah.
melting. I was not doing well with that. So maybe for anybody's listening who is a manifestor or projector in design, your time is coming and it will be okay. Find some
No,
horizontal parenting hacks.
yeah, well, no, I think it's helpful to be honest about that, because like I feel like it's a lot as types that don't have consistent energy of like being like I have to keep showing up with this kind of daily devotion. So finding ways to take care of yourself wherever and however you can, even if it's for just a few minutes.
Yeah. I have one
Okay.
last question about manifestors before we
Yeah.
move. This is personal. And I was like, I'm going to save any personal questions to the end, but I like physically can't. I'm so excited. I I ran a wellness center in New York. I worked with a bunch of other women. We were always collaborating, always initiating. I moved to Charlotte, and started kind of my own online business and that kind of thing 5 years ago. And I was reading your book, and it was a really good reminder, which I'm going to just flash really quick so everybody can get how do you choose, because it's so good. It's such an easy read, and it will give you everything you need to know about yourself and your, relationships and your friends. But I'm reading this and I'm like, man, manifestors are not really meant to be solopreneurs.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that like, you are somebody who's so good at starting things. And so, in an ideal world, I think there are lots of configurations, but I think in an ideal world, you could bring new things to life, and then those things would kind of be automated and keep living on in their own way. Or there's like a team or somebody you could delegate to, so you can kind of be in the role of initiating the next thing. So I think like in an ideal world, you are allowed to keep initiating. I mean, being a solopreneur might work if like, you just kind of innovate and create your like new offers every 6 months or so, like something that allows some freshness in. But like, yeah, I think in an ideal world, having somebody that you could delegate to and support to is really important. Manifestors are very autonomous. You're super independent, and yet you also need a lot of support. Like, how is it working for you? Do you feel that? Like, what do you think would be the dream?
I feel like the last year I've focused on really getting back out into the community instead of exclusively being online, and it's bringing me back to life. Like I love what I do. I will always love what I do, but I was finding myself losing some passion for it, not feeling inspired. And a lot of things that felt like, is this even the right fit? Do I just get a 9 to 5 job? And not
Totally.
because it wasn't effective, but because something just felt like it didn't feel the same. But I have been really intentional about getting back out into the community. I'm speaking a lot more in the community and just working with people, collaborating a little bit more. And that seems so much better. I feel like a lot more like myself when doing that. But yeah, I'm reading your book and I was just like, oh, wow, this is just a great reminder. I think even if you visit human design once,
Yeah.
going back and just continuing to learn and implement the new things that you're learning about yourself is so helpful.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's like it just never, I feel like something new comes up every time. Like I wrote the book and yet I would like open back up to a chapter on generators and I would like discover something new about my husband and I like wrote the book. And so like it just brings up something new every time we return to it. And also one thing I'll say about your design, and this is beyond you being a manifester, you have something called a 4 in your profile, which means like community is really important to you. And so it also makes a lot of sense to me that like being like in community and physical spaces that you enjoy around people like will give you so much life in a way that like an online space just probably won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So
Okay.
I am like inundated with projectors. Projectors just they just magnet to me, and I love my projectors. Can we dive into them?
Yes, tell me. So you are married to a projector, and do you know your daughter's designs?
I have a manifestor and a projector. Both of my girls are
Oh my
manifestors and projectors.
gosh.
My
You
husband
might,
is a projector.
oh my God, you might have already said that, but I think I mean, I just told you I grew up in the same household, a manifestor sister and a projector dad and a manifestor mom. Exact same configuration. So, okay. Projectors. Projectors are very natural leaders, guides, teachers. They are so wise about people. They are so good at making others feel seen and understood. They are often in the positions of CEO, manager, coach, podcast host, like places where they're really asking good questions and kind of stewarding other people's energy. They tend to love systems like human design because they are so naturally wise about people. And so any system that kind of like hones this understanding they already have is appealing. Their energy really ebbs and flows, and it's throughout the day, so really learning how to honor the natural rhythm as a projector of like building in moments of space and pause and rest and like allowing the energy to naturally come back. I will say that a big lesson for me as a projector was allowing unproductive rest into my life. I used to feel that even rest had to be productive. It was like, and what podcast can I listen to and what course can I take? And so really allowing time where like my goal was not to produce anything. And so again, as a mom of two young kids, that time is shorter than it used to be, and yet it's still necessary. And as projectors, we're here to be invited, to wait for somebody to kind of recognize our values, see us very clearly, and invite us in to share it. And I will say, as a last piece, because you have a projector daughter, a projector husband, one of the ways, and you might have read this in the projector chapters, one of the ways that you can really love on projectors is through words of affirmation, is through very specific acknowledgement of who they are and what they bring to the table. As projectors, like that unlocks our magic. So if you have projectors in your life, really offering them that acknowledgement, even if you don't need to receive it, or even if it doesn't seem like that form of that love language is very natural to you.
I think having projector, like just so many friends and family that are projectors, the one thing that I've learned as a manifester is that even at like the dinner table, I will ask my daughter what she thinks about it.
So
Or
good.
and she comes home from school and she'll just be like, I was trying to talk to people at lunch and no one was listening to me. So I don't know necessarily how to help her in settings where people don't understand human design as much, but I try to, at least in the house, make sure that I'm inviting her and my oldest
Good.
daughter, who's a manifestor. I'm like, we have to make sure Kylie feels included in these
Hmm.
conversations that we're inviting her in to speak. And it's funny with my husband, if he offers my oldest daughter advice, she's a manifestor and he's a projector, she does not want to hear it. She gets super defensive. And so it's even just the understanding that sometimes your design impacts your relationships, and
Oh my
knowing
God,
the
yeah.
people you love and like knowing how they work. Like for a really long time, my oldest, I was like, before I knew human design, I'm like, she just gets what she wants. Like this girl just, she'll walk in a room and just, yeah, I remember we were at some place and we weren't familiar with the people, and she walked in the room and came back with a huge basket of strawberries. I'm like, where? Where did you get those? She's like, I just wanted strawberries. I'm like, oh, okay. Like she just had a natural way
Wow.
kind of getting what she wanted and being very intentional and diligent about that. And then my youngest daughter came and was the absolute opposite, where I wasn't even sure of what she wanted half the time because, she wasn't speaking up in the same way my oldest was. So I find that understanding your kids as a like
Oh
in
my
human
God.
design is an absolute game changer, because I can change the way I parent based on their design. Do you
Oh
see
my
that
God.
with girls too?
I do. I just think that, like, and honestly, I will say my biggest dream for the book, and I'm already seeing it used this way, is that people don't only read the chapters about themselves, but the chapters about their partners and their friends and their kids, because it is just so revelatory. Be like, oh my God, this person is wired differently. They need something different from me. And I just love, and I'll talk about my kids too, but it's funny hearing you talk because I always find the dynamic between projectors and manifestors so interesting, as one who also grew up in that dynamic in my home growing up, because projectors are really here to guide people and manifestors are not here to be guided. So it's just like such an interesting dynamic of like how projectors can learn to offer their insight when they're invited and not force it, and how manifestors can be aware of the need for an invitation and kind of creating that space at the appropriate time. But yes, I have an 8-month-old manifestor and a 2.5-year-old manifesting generator, which I know we haven't talked about. And, I observe their designs so much and I already see how different they are. And I think something that I really observed in my manifestor daughter is one, she's like very intense in a way that I just love from manifestors, but like also so peaceful. Like I feel like I could spend like all of my time with her, like in a way that just is like, it just that like the signal that manifestors are in alignment is when they just feel peace. And I just feel that from her. But the piece that I found so hilarious, one is that she came out in one push, which was crazy because manifestors are so fast. But two, manifestors need freedom. And when she was just 2 months old, she started rolling over, which is pretty early to start rolling over and busting out of her swaddle and would only sleep on her belly. And I'm like sitting there, like trying to flip her back over because I read on the internet they aren't supposed to sleep on their belly so early. And then I called my pediatrician. I was like, what do I do? I can't stop her. And she was like, you can't stop her. Like, you just have to let her do her. And so, like, it was just so funny. I was like, I can't stop her. She just knows exactly what she wants. She's so discerning about people. And like I just gotta like let her take the lead here. So it's been so fun to witness it in her. I'm obsessed with manifestors as one, it's just special having one who's so young.
I think it's cool to watch just because the energy even being birthed into the world is very intense, very specific, very
What
sure.
very I know. It was so I literally did not even know. Maybe TMI, but I was just like I had no idea I was pushing and then I was like, "Wait, the head is out." Like I was just like so it was so fast. I was in total shock because my oldest took a lot longer. Anyways, manifestors are fast and they're so powerful and like it's so beautiful to know when you have one around you so you can really respect their power. Okay. Other types are also incredibly amazing. I know we're talking about these types because we love them and we are them, but I hope you guys know that I am so in love with every single type. Okay. Do you have any questions about projectors specifically?
How can we help our projector children navigate friendships who aren't always inviting them?
Mm, gosh, I think a hard lesson for me as a projector has been the people that I want to see me are often not the ones that do. Where I'm like, God, I want this person to like get the value of this, and they're not necessarily the ones that do. So, if I was talking to her, I would just like ask her to pay attention to like where recognition comes very naturally, where it feels like she doesn't have to convince others of her worth or prove her value, where like they just see it. And again, it might be hard because she's like, I want to be part of this group, and yet they're not the ones that see me. Yet this one individual really does see me clearly. And maybe it's you, or maybe it's her sister, maybe it's her dad, or maybe it's one friend, but I think really investing her time in those people because that level of recognition is where she thrives. Because she's different than many other people and how her energy moves. And projectors are so stunning and wise, but it's hard for those gifts to come out when people don't see them. I always say like my favorite projector party trick is like going to a party and like sitting down like in the coziest place and then kind of just like letting conversations come naturally and seeing who comes to me. I think it's really worked for me where it's like there are gonna be people that like are magnetized to me and like people that are not. And like I don't need to force myself to be seen by those who aren't ready for it. And also one thing I would just also say to her is that projectors are so wise and so perceptive, and sometimes people aren't ready for those insights. Where like she might see so much that could be so helpful and so transformative. And yet, if people aren't ready, it can go right over their head. And so, part of the invitation for me has been around helping me know who's actually ready for my insights and when, and like not forcing it on people that aren't ready because that only makes me bitter and resentful.
That's such great advice. And even just something simple that I've like encouraged her to do is just if she has something she really loves, like she loves Olivia Rodrigo right now. And so she'll get a t-shirt. And so she'll wear the t-shirt to camp to help spark conversations where she doesn't have to initiate it, but somebody might come up to her and be like, oh, I love Olivia Rodrigo. And then she has that like
Wow.
in a little bit. So I've been trying to find like little ways for her to connect with people, but she is just a very sensitive old soul. And so, but it breaks my mama heart when,
Of
she's like, I was
course.
talking at the lunch table and nobody really even acknowledged I was talking. And I'm like, ah,
I know. My gosh. I love that though, because not that, but I love the t-shirt example because, projectors are here to be invited, but one of our lessons is that people cannot invite us unless they see us. So we have to let ourselves be seen. So I just love that example. It's like this is her way of like making herself visible, not in a way where it's overpowering, where it's like, I want to be friends with you, but it's more like, here I am, here's my authentic self. If you like resonate, come talk to me. So I think that's a really beautiful way of working with that invitation piece.
I love it.
Okay.
Manifesting generators is the design I would prefer to be. Like, I would love to have the energy and slight chaos of a manifesting generator.
I know.
Let's
It's
dive into
I love
so
manifesting
amazing.
generators. It's so amazing. Okay, manifesting generators are so boundless in their energy and enthusiasm when they feel genuinely excited by what they're doing. When they're genuinely excited, like their energy is through the roof, they light up the room. So, a big lesson for them and for generators, which we'll talk about, is really learning how to prioritize their own satisfaction and seeing that not as a selfish choice, but the most generous thing they can do because it lifts up everyone around them. Manifesting generators are so cool because they're just so multi-passionate. These are my clients that are like, I'm a lawyer, I'm opening a dance studio, I'm considering opening a juice shop, I'm writing a novel on the side. Like they just can't be contained into a box and like they're gonna break out of any box people try to put them in. They're also incredibly efficient, and you might resonate with this because you have this in your design too, but they can often make more happen in a few hours than most can, like I said, in a whole day. And they just are like, can see the fastest way to make something happen. So, a big lesson for them is not expecting others to move at their pace because that can bring a lot of disappointment their way. And they are incredibly magnetic. They're really meant to find opportunities by just opening up their awareness, seeing what shows up, and see where their gut is naturally pulling them.
I love that. And I think one of the most important things when I'm working with somebody and I see that they have that they're a manifesting generator is they always feel guilt for jumping around and not sticking to something. That is like the
It's a great
biggest thing
point.
I see. What advice would you give a manifesting generator who feels like I just can't stick with anything? I'm over here and then I want to start a photography studio and then I've, started green juice company and then I, ended up back at nursing. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
I would tell them they're doing things exactly how they're meant to. Like manifesting generators are here to try things out and let things go. Pivoting is just like part of their nature. And so where they might feel guilty for being like, oh my God, I'm moving on. It's like they got the thing they needed from that experience and it's time to move on to the next one. So I would remind them like that is the most natural way for them to operate. It's helpful if the people around them understand that too. But to me, I think a lot of manifesting generators can interpret that as flakiness or being scattered when it's really just their need for variety, and change and evolution. And I remember sitting with a father who was a generator and his daughter was a manifesting generator. And when he came to me, he's like, Erin, I'm really struggling. My daughter's doing lacrosse. She's doing softball. She's doing tennis. Like she's playing like, volleyball. Like she just needs to choose a sport and stick with it. And I was like, looking at her design, I was like, she doesn't. Like she's doing things perfectly. So I would just remind the manifesting generators that I know that it can feel hard to pivot if you feel like you're disappointing others, but people will not get the best of you if you're staying in something out of obligation or desire to please. Because when you're full hearted about what you're working on, you literally power up an entire room. So it's worth letting your natural excitement guide you and say yes to the things that bring that version of you out.
How can we, as a partner of a manifesting generator or a parent of a manifesting generator, encourage or support them?
Well, one, I would say don't try to keep up with them. I think like let them move at their own pace. I think giving them space, I would say similar to manifestors, they're going to be in their own uninterrupted flow and do their thing is great. I had a client who I tell this story in the book, but built like a shed in his backyard where he would kind of retreat there once a day to like do his woodworking and then come back revitalized. And so kind of giving them space to go like do the things that they feel passionate about without guilt at all. And also I think that manifesting generators can really benefit when we take things off their plate that they're not excited about and create more space for them to kind of do things that bring more natural energy to them.
I love it. And we're coming into the last two.
Yeah.
So for the generators, which are the majority of people, is that true?
Generators and manifesting generators combined are about 70%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a generator design in their chart, what can they know about themselves?
So there's a lot of similarity with manifesting generators in that generators are also quite boundless in their energy when they're excited by what they're doing. They can really struggle with boundaries because they are so capable. People can like pile a lot onto them and then they can burn out obviously very quickly in the process. So I would just remind the generators as well that like carving out space for the things you enjoy like is not a selfish choice. It's the most generous thing you can do for everybody. I think generators also have to fully expend their energy. They often do best when they kind of fully use up their battery throughout the day and they drop into bed delightfully spent. They're like, I left it all in the field and now I can sleep. So, as a generator, I would consider like, how do you feel when you drop into bed? Is it like delightfully spent? Is it fulfilled? Or is it kind of restless and depleted? Because that will give you a kind of a signal into whether or not you're aligned with how you're using your energy. And generators are very magnetic. You aren't meant to chase after a thing or come up with ideas out of thin air. It's really around seeing what shows up in your world and kind of what naturally sparks your gut and following that pull. And I think generators, they can sometimes feel like martyrs where they're kind of tending to everyone else's needs above their own. And so I would say one of the ways that we can love on our generators is again paying attention to kind of what brings them joy, what brings them passion, asking them all the questions about it and going to do those things with them and like making it easier for them to do those things because that often reminds them that like their desires are so important and deserve to be prioritized.
I love the idea of just checking in with how you're feeling at the end of the day if you're a generator listening to this, because I think that a lot of times people take those emotions and that energy and they, decide it means certain things about themselves or who they are or what they have to offer. And really, it's just clues to whether you're living in your alignment of your design or not.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so I remember being on this retreat and I heard this guy, Devin Bandison, who's a coach, use that term delightfully spent. And I was like, that's it. Like that is when generators and manifesting generators get to the end of the day and they feel delightfully spent. They feel like exhausted in the most fulfilling way. It just like is the perfect indicator they're right on track. And so that's kind of the signal to follow.
I love
Okay, then we
that.
have reflectors.
Yes. I've
Do
only
you
met one ever.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So reflectors are 1% of the population, so they are the rarest type. These are people that are incredibly sensitive to their environment. You actually might resonate with a good bit of this description too. They kind of take in and amplify their space. So being in spaces that feel good around people that uplift them is so crucial. It kind of really gets them on the right path. Projectors are also incredibly wise. They see, sense, and feel things that most people miss and can really identify what's not working in a space or out of alignment in a person, kind of how things could be made better. So they really thrive in positions where their perspective is valued for that and they're invited in to share it. What I love about reflectors, and this is actually true of you too, is that they're very fluid. They're meant to have many different purposes over the course of their life, meant to express themselves in many different ways among different friend groups. And so their job is not to force consistency, to not express themselves in just one way, but honor kind of their multidimensional nature and see what feels most like them in each moment. And their opportunities really arise by planting themselves in the right spaces, the right online communities, the right coffee shops, the right cities. Like when they're in the right space and really kind of open to what comes, often the most unforeseen and magical opportunities arise.
I love that. Now, because you've read so many charts,
Mhm.
can you meet somebody and have a good sense of what their design is?
Oh man, it's always fun to guess. I'd say my husband's actually better at guessing than I am, but I would say the type that I seem to be able to get most often is manifestors. Like they just have such a distinct energy. Like there's like an intensity to them that they walk into a room and it's just felt. And so I think that I guess for a lot of other ones, I think projectors I'm actually pretty good at spotting too. So I think reflectors are harder for me to spot because they are so vast in their expression. So like depending on the day and when I get them, like I might guess all the different types.
What is the one area of human design profile and chart that you wish more people would pay attention to? That would give you
Mm,
some bigger insight.
okay. Well, there are so many pieces that are so useful, like authority, how we make decisions, and profile. But the piece that comes up, which I think is so underrated, is definition. Definition, do you know this about your chart?
I'm not sure. Describe it. I want to see if I know what you're
Okay.
talking about.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you yours and you'll see. So, definition I find is so useful because it speaks to how we can best kind of process information and collaborate with other people. And so this is something I almost always bring up in team sessions or partnership sessions or family sessions because it just reveals how different we each are. Like, as an example, you are what we call an independent or single definition. And so that means you are very naturally independent. There's like a natural like wholeness in your energy where like you're not really here to like be completed by others. Like there's just you're good on your own. Of course you can be in partnership and all the things, but it's really around being with people not because they complete you, but just because they amplify things and they make things better. But I would say for you, it's so important to be in relationships and collaborations where your independence is honored, where you're kind of able to go do your own thing. You're not expected to collaborate all the time. You don't have meetings all day, but like you really have that independence honored and it's not seen as like something wrong. Like I feel like sometimes people are threatened by these people where it's like, I want you to need me more. And like that's just not a yeah, it's just not a great dynamic. So I think really feeling like your independence is honored is often where you thrive. Curious how and if you resonate with that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny because I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I don't like to leave my schedule too open, even when people are booking podcasts, because I don't know how I'm going to feel 6 weeks from now to maintain
Totally.
the do that thing. So I've never really left my schedule open for people to book whenever. I'm really meticulous about offering only certain spaces because I want to honor that need for going
Smart.
to have coffee by myself, or I'm very fine on my own in so
Yeah,
many ways. It's really cool because I see that with my daughter too. She's very like could never talk to another human, I think,
super
unless
good.
she wants to. And then when she does, she's like a little bubbly thing, but where do people find their own definition if they're looking in their chart? Where is that
So
located?
if you look up at humandesignblueprint.com, you'll see that there's a list of attributes listed next to your chart under overview. Actually, no, sorry, click on chart. It's on both, but then you'll see the list of attributes and see what's listed under definition. There are 5 possible ones: single, split, triple, synthesizing, and sorry, triple, subjective, and none.
Hey, I've never heard of that before. I'm excited to
I
dive
know
into that farther than
it's
family.
so fun. It's so useful because you also like I remember sitting with a partnership, a married couple, and one of them was super independent like you, and the other one was what we call split. And like so she liked being around others, help her process. She often liked to talk things out. And so like they would struggle when an issue came up because he would want to go off and discover it on his own, and she would like need to talk through it all. And so they were believing each other was wrong in their approach, and then they just realized they were really different and that his independence needed to be honored and she needed to find other ways to kind of get her connection needs met beyond him.
What is your definition?
I'm split. And so and so is my husband, but I think a big reminder for me with split definition is often we are so activated by other people. So I think one way that that has manifested is when I feel stuck or it feels like things aren't really flowing. When I go to work from a coffee shop, even if I have headphones on, it's like the most activating thing for me. So being around others can like bring so much clarity where there was stuckness. So that's just always been a really amazing tool for me to have. And I've also never built a business on my own. I've always had a partner.
What is the most important life-changing thing you've learned in your own human design chart that changed the course of your life?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I think that honestly, probably that first piece, like when I discovered human design 10 years ago now, I was working at a bunch of startups and I was enjoying it, but felt pretty unfulfilled. And I think what was really revealing is that I was told that like my gift was really kind of seeing people clearly and I just was able to realize that like I could build a career around that. So like that is what led me into human design. So I think kind of being reminded of my gifts is really what gave me so much permission to just like build the business that I did and choose the life that I chose.
Yeah. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and I know people are going to rush to buy How Do You Choose? I will link everything in the show notes, but I know people are going to want to work with you, get their charts from you. How can they do that?
Okay, so the book is called How Do You Choose? Like you said, a human design guide to what's best for you at work and love and in life. On Instagram, I'm at Erin Claire Jones and Human Design Blueprint. And if you want to work with me, I sell custom guides that are all about your unique design. That's at humandesignblueprint.com, and we have the discount code COMEBACK. That also applies to our course. And also, there are private sessions available at erinclairejones.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. You are absolute magic, and I'm so grateful.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.